Welcome to another CBJ podcast. I'm your host today, Scott Rennick, and I'm excited to be sitting down today with Alice Cow, the co-founder and CEO of Sender One Climbing Gyms out of the LA area. We're going to get into her background, talk about how she got the business started, entrepreneurship and leadership, talk a little bit about comp climbing and the Olympics coming to town. So hang on. I hope you enjoy the conversation. But before we get started, I need a quick messages from our sponsors. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to do these podcasts. Climbing Wall Association. CWA offers industry certifications, standards, events, and community connection, helping gyms stay informed and operate with clarity. Learn more at cwapro.org. Rooney. Out of Norway, Rooney makes chalk and apparel for climbers, inspired by YouTuber Magnus Mitbo. Learn more at rungne.com. Walltopia. Outdoor climbing walls create visibility and expand programming. Walltopia designs outdoor walls specifically for commercial facilities. Learn more at walltopia.com. Cascade Specialty. Since 1999, Cascade Specialty has installed and refurbished top-quality flooring for both rope and bouldering areas. Learn more at cascadespecialty.com. Rock Gym Pro. Since 2008, Rock Gym Pro gym management software has powered climbing facilities across the globe. Learn more at rockgympro.com. Welcome to CBJ Podcast. Alice, thank you for taking some time to sit down and talk with me today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Excited for this conversation.
Yeah, it was, Sender One, when you first opened, we'll get into it with Chris Sharma and like all the splash that you made, but it's been this gym franchise that I've always had this like outside admiration for. It feels like y'all are just doing it right. And so the opportunity to talk with you, it was something that, we talked like a year or two ago, we talked about trying to get on a call together. So we finally made it. So yeah, thank you.
I remember. And you know what? It's funny you say that because I think that a lot of times we're sort of like, I'm like heads down, just trying to grow the business and I don't look up. And so it's funny to hear you say that because it's not rainbows and butterflies every day, for sure.
Really? Business isn't always easy and smooth. Well, so, our audience are the people that work at climbing gyms and run climbing gyms and run the brands and services that serve climbing gyms. And so I do want to try to keep that our conversation in that kind of vein to help and ultimately kind of inspire and inform these people. So, because I think you've done some incredible things and maybe they can learn from your experiences and maybe you can inspire them to do some awesome things on their own.
I'll try.
But also you have like this wild backstory. And so I'm going to link to it in the show notes because there's this other video about the parachute kid story. And like before you got into business, like you came into the professional life with a lot of life experiences already. And then you also, you went to USCLA and then you've had these jobs where you're like a high level executive, a high level sales and with big businesses and real industries, so to speak.
The climbing industry is a real industry. Let me just say.
Glad to hear you say that. We might talk about that a little bit more, but like, yeah, where did it, and I know there's a little story of loss in how you got into climbing, but could you, kind of recap that a little bit for our readers? And I'll link to the full story, but
sure.
Where did you get into climbing and climbing industry? How did this happen for you?
All right. So I'll start from how I got into climbing, actually. So and we'll get into this because I think I felt like an outsider for a really long time. I've been in this business now 13 years and this year I went to CWA and I was like, oh, I'm a climbing gym owner. I feel like I belong here. Anyways, but I had a very serious boyfriend in college. I went to UCLA. I was an intern at Lehman Brothers. Have you heard of Lehman Brothers? Like before I went under? This is like back in the day. And he was an analyst and I was an intern. And we were together for 5 years. And when I was 25, all I wanted to do was to be his wife. And I quit my job. And he got offered a job at a hedge fund in Hong Kong. and we were going to move to Hong Kong together, and it didn't work out. I ended up going to Hong Kong by myself. And when I got there, I found out that he married somebody else. And I was devastated. I didn't get out of bed for a month. And so I ended up like leaving my job in Hong Kong. I was selling toys at this point. So I took a job in London, and I moved to London. And it was funny because I moved there in the summertime. Like, no, I was interviewing for the job in the summertime. And then I was like, wow, this is so beautiful. And when I got there, it was the winter time. So I wake up in the morning, 8 o'clock, and it's dark outside. And I come home from work and it's 3:45 and it's dark outside. I was like super depressed. So one day a friend of mine told me that I should look for something to do like indoors. And you know, in the industry, like the European gyms were always a little bit more developed, right? Like bigger and better. And so I went to a climbing gym, and honestly, I know I don't know, it's like a fortune cookie, but it changed my life. It changed my life. And I was one of those people that, this is like before there was Facebook. It was just like email groups. So I would email this group and say, hey, my name is Alice. It's 7 o'clock. I'm wearing a black shirt and a blue backpack. You know, come find me if you need a partner. And like these people, they taught me how to lead climb. You're not supposed to teach people at the gym, but they did. And like took me outside, and I was at the gym every night until midnight. And then one day, I felt better. You can relate to that, right? Like that's like a lot of people's climbing stories.
There's a lot of things you can get out of climbing, and one of them is personal healing for sure, in many dimensions. So that's amazing.
Well, that's how I got into climbing. And then I came back to the US. I was working for an American company living abroad, and my contract was up. So I came back to the US in 2008 during the recession. Actually, I remember exactly when I found out that Lehman Brothers had gone bankrupt. I was actually still living in London. So I came back to the US, and I was climbing here in LA, in Santa Monica at Rock Creation. And different story, but I met my husband. I had another partner. There was 3 of us in the beginning, and we just had this idea. And like now when I say it, it sounds really funny, but we were all professionals. Like my husband, he went to Harvard. He was a lawyer working at a law firm in downtown. I was like an executive working at a toy company doing international sales. And I always heard, Scott, that some professionals, they have a side gig on the weekends. Like they have a coffee shop or like a food truck. And I thought, you know what? My side gig is going to be a climbing gym. Like I want to go to my day job, and on the weekends, I want to have this climbing gym that I go climbing. So we started the same way a lot of people did. We didn't come from any money. So, because I had heard also rumors, we went to the first CWA, I had heard people talk about us like, oh, the straight Asian kids are like coming to the climbing industry. And I just like, that didn't feel like me at all. Cause I wasn't one of those people, but we didn't have like more money or more experience. We didn't know how to run a business. We took a lot of the money that we had from our savings. We got an SBA loan. We put our house up for mortgage for the SBA loan. And then we just like went to our friends and family. So my original investors were like my brother, my sister-in-law, my best friend from high school, my husband's best friend who was an FBI agent. And it was like $10,000, $15,000 checks in the beginning to get started. And so I'll tie back. I think you might have heard this in the other podcast about my ex-boyfriend, which I talk a lot about, like pretty openly about this now. But during this time, my ex-boyfriend, the same guy that I was with for 5 years, who went to work for a hedge fund in Hong Kong, he called me and he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, you know what? I feel better. I was like really depressed, but I feel better now. And I'm starting a climbing gym business. And I said, I asked him what he was doing. He goes, oh, you know what? I did really well in 2008. And, I want to be an investor in your business. And actually, my immediate reaction was I threw the phone and I was pissed. I was like, you know what? I'm so angry at you that there's no way I'm taking your money. I'm not going to let you buy your guilt out of this. But actually, my husband talked me into it like later. And he was like, Alice, you're running around collecting checks for $12,000. Like this guy wants to give you $500,000. How much, like, can't you just find a way to forgive him so you can have your dream? So I did. So eventually we took him on as one of our first investors, my ex-boyfriend, who I'm still really good friends with. And now he's actually one of the largest investors in Sender One.
And there's other twists and turns to that story. I understand. We'll link to that. One of the things that I love about two threads of that I find really interesting. One, that you like really just found climbing. It healed you and you decided you wanted to do it as a career, like a side hustle for a minute. And then also you didn't, you haven't explained where that transition was between it being like your weekend job and no, it's not your weekend job. So what happened in that moment? Because I think a lot of people still haven't visualized that in our industry. Like, oh yeah, it can be professional. It can be my real job. And I know you feel that way.
I mean, I do not. Yeah.
Yeah. For a long time. When did you quit your real job, and how did that whole move go to doing this like full time for real as a previous executive?
So there's three of us in the beginning, and there's only two left. Like one of my partners, the founder, actually, he left the business like 6 years ago. So it's just me and my husband now. But I was the last one to quit my job. So my partner quit, and then my husband left his law job. I still worked a whole year selling toys internationally, traveling 100 days a year, going to toy fairs, doing accounts and stuff, and had a baby, like raising my child like this the whole time. Because honestly, it was scary. I had a mortgage and I had a car payment and, kids and health insurance. And also we didn't pay ourselves for 3 years. I remember this. We were like really running out of money in the first couple of years, and we had to sell we had a condo that we sold in Santa Monica just because we were like, I don't know how long we're going to be able to hold on. And then I think it was like year 3 or 4, maybe year 3, 2 or 3. One of my mentors told me, he goes, you know what, you need to prioritize like paying yourself, because I was afraid to take money out of the business. And he just, you know what, just set a goal and just start paying yourself from this day. And once you set your goal, like you will figure it out. And that's when we had only one gym too. It was just Santa Ana. Yeah.
Oh, so it was rocky.
Oh my God, it was scary. That's what I'm saying, is it never looks like how it looks on the outside. You know this, right? We've talked about this. People must talk about this enough. Like it seems like you're crushing it, and nobody's crushing it all the time.
And just to put the numbers back, you were talking about getting $10,000 and $15,000 checks, and a big $500,000 shows up. What did you have to raise in total to get the first gym? Right,
the first gym in Santa Ana, Sender One Santa Ana, we raised $2.5 million in equity, $1 million in bank loans, and honestly, It wasn't enough. Like we opened, like not being able, like barely being able to make payroll. I remember actually after the grand opening, we had this amazing grand opening with Chris Sharma, which we'll get into. And the next day I was like, oh my God, I think I don't know if we're going to make payroll. We better sell 100 memberships today. Otherwise we're not going to make it. It was like that.
You are not alone in that. There's a lot of gyms.
At the time it felt like it, right? I felt like I was the only one, but now I'm like, okay, everybody was feeling like that all the time.
Yeah. Especially if you weren't paying yourself for 3 years, y'all weren't making any, personal income off that, then yeah, it sounds like more tenuous. Actually, I got the different vibe from some of my research. But but you quit your job even though you weren't paying yourself for those years. But eventually, and how long did it take to get the second gym? When did you open? The first one was 2012.
We opened 2013, and then we opened LAX 2017. So about 4 years later. And I think, I'd say like it was actually, a lot of people ask me about scaling, right? Like growing or going to a second location. That was an active decision. I remember we had to decide like, okay, do we want to scale now? And I think that's one of the reasons I did decide to quit my job, because I decided, you know what, if I want to give this a real shot, if I wanted to have a chance for this to be a career, I need to spend all my time like seeing if I can make it work. And then what we did was we went back to a lot of the original investors. We brought in some new investors that time, and then we opened LAX with more or less the same group of people.
When did it feel like you had migrated to a real job and it wasn't a side hustle that might or might not make it?
10 years, maybe almost 10 years. And I'll tell you a funny story, because I was, investment banking, selling toys. I had a lot of suits in my closet. And every year I'd clean my closet and I'd go through these suits and I'd be like, you know what? I better not sell it, because in case this side gig didn't work out, like I need to get a job. And it was only a couple of years ago. One day I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm ever going to wear this again. I think I'm good. I have like enough Arc'teryx jackets now. I think I can get rid of the suits that I need.
So I'm really curious to hear, and this is kind of a side tangent, but it relates to that whole professionalism in our industry thing. I don't know if you can see this on the screen.
I work in a climbing gym. Don't tell mom.
Don't tell mom.
Yeah.
I did this as like a kind of a joke thing. I actually made these in the first month or two when I first took over CBJ. And I shared this with a couple people and they're like, no way, you can't put those out. That like devalues our professionalism and it like denigrates the whole career thing. And so I literally have been sitting on these for 7 years, but I took them to the summit this last cycle and gave them out and people thought they were kind of fun. I'm really curious. What do you think about that kind of that statement, that positioning? Don't tell mom I work at a climbing gym. What's your thoughts?
So I want to tell your story, actually. I think we didn't cover this in the beginning, but my mom was always an entrepreneur. So my mom's been really supportive of this business. I mean, she did tell me when I told her like, hey, you know what? I'm going to quit my job and start this climbing gym. She actually said to me, she was like, well, why did you have to pick the service industry? She was like, that's hard work, working 7 days a week. It's like owning a restaurant, right? It's really hard. But my husband, and I can speak about this publicly because he talks about it. So this is his story. My husband went to Harvard twice. He was undergrad and graduate school, like law school, and he worked at a law firm. And when we told his parents, like we came home and we're like, hey, you know what? We're going to put all this money to this business and we're going to put our house to get a bank loan. They were like, I don't know exactly what they said, but they said something like, you know what, you are wasting. We didn't send you to Harvard to like waste your Harvard education to hand out rental shoes at the front desk. It was like that, like something like that.
Threw it down.
Honestly, for the first couple of years, especially when things were really hard, it was like, wow, you know what, we questioned ourselves, like, did we make a mistake? And then actually, during COVID is probably the hardest. During COVID, even my mom, who's been super supportive, came to me and said, you know what? I know you've been at this a long time. Like, can't you just sell it? Maybe it's time now. Because like she started to like lose the belief that like we can make this a career, But maybe that's why I'm so stubborn because I'm like, no. Like I have a real job, but I needed to change my own vocabulary because for years I was like going around telling people that this is my side gig. And then I started saying, no, you know what? No, this is my full-time job and this is my real job and only job. And this is my career. I'm super proud of it. And I am out to do this for as many people as possible.
So tell mom, it's okay. I think, and something you didn't say in there, but like I've been doing this for 30 years in this industry. I'm rooted in this too. Climbing is good for you. Climbing is so good for you. I know that's kind of your origin story and it's what keeps a lot of people around, but whether it's community or the movement of your body or the mental work and mental exercise you get to do with problem solving and being in the moment or being outside and having blue skies above you and dirt under your fingernails, whatever the thing is, it's so good for you. And so, yeah, mom, I'm doing this great thing for the world, working on climbing.
You should make that, print that, it'll be funny.
Yeah.
Make it like a bumper sticker.
All right. I'll make more stickers. One of the things that like really stood out at the time is you had Chris Sharma. Chris Sharma was like part of the marketing, part of the investor pool. I guess he's still involved. Like tell us a little bit about the Chris Sharma story in connection with Sender One.
I'm going to tell you my version of the Chris Sharma story. Funny, I just talked to him on the phone. I talked to him last week and he was telling me about his kids and he might come this summer, so we might hang out. It's like really surreal, but I'll go back to the beginning and I'll tell you my version of it. I'm sure you can ask him. He has a different version, but we met him when so at this point we had like raised some money, not all of it. We were running around like looking for a building and probably seen like 100, buildings. And we saw this one in Santa Ana and we were meeting with EP. And at the time he was like an EP sponsored athlete. Do you remember this? It was like a long time ago, but so he was, I think, in LA for a meeting and then EP invited him to come to see this project that they were pitching. So he's like surprised us at this meeting, and we're like, oh my God, Chris Sharma is here. And then after the meeting was over, he called us and he said, I've always thought about like being involved with a climbing gym company. And I think also at the point, his dad lives in California, right? And he was looking to maybe move back to California and spend more time here. So he just said, what do you think about us working together? And so then we invited him over to our house. I still remember this. It was so funny because he came to our house and we pitched him. We went over the whole idea, like this is what we're doing. This is the business plan. This is, a financial model and everything. And as he was leaving, my husband had a copy of this King Lines DVD And he wanted Chris to sign it, but he's like too embarrassed to ask Chris to sign his DVD. So I was like, okay, my brother really likes you. Can you sign this? And then after Chris left, we were jumping up and down like, children. It was so funny. Anyways, so that's how he got involved. And then, we had a couple more meetings, met his financial advisor, and then eventually, he came on and became an investor. And then we joined forces, and he did all our marketing. And and honestly, you know what? It's really surreal because, and I've learned a lot. I'd say this, like I've learned a lot from Chris, and I really respect him as an athlete and like as a celebrity. Because like one small story also, like when we opened Santana, the first day, it was crazy. There was like thousands of people waiting to come in and people driving from all over town to like see this gym open, right? And you know what he did, Scott? He stood in line with the people and took pictures with everybody and like signed autographs. Like he never took a break because he told me, he was like, you got to remember, like these are the people that made me. And I just thought that was all so special. Yeah. So anyways, he's still an original investor. But he lives in Spain now and he has his own life. But we see him when he's here. Yeah.
He must have had a good experience because he went on to Spain and opened 3 gyms of his own over there. So he must have learned some things from you.
I hope so.
Yeah. That's interesting that like kind of, and I don't want to, commoditize the relationship and the connection you had, but the idea of like leveraging some pro climbers for exposure and to get launched, is that something that you think other climbing gyms could look into? Was that it's obviously that was good for you.
You know what? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that because that was just my unique experience. And part of it, when I look back on it now, right? Like I said, I'm so thankful for Chris. We're still good friends, but like, I also think part of it, maybe we did it because I felt like I wasn't good enough because I felt like an outsider. I felt like I wasn't a legitimate climber. So like, what business do I have to be in the climbing gym business? So it was probably some of my own insecurities.
You said that a little bit, and then I kind of almost made that word. I'd be like, yeah, you're kind of the new crop, but you've been doing this for 15 years. And why do you think you feel like an outsider? Like there's climbing gym owners all over the place that don't have that like visceral connection that you do. Like I won't say it saved your life, but if you're depressed in bed, having a hard time and it solved that problem in your life, like there's a lot of people that are in this business that don't have that story, that don't have that reason to want to be in climbing. So why do you think you feel like an outsider?
Oh, I mean, first of all, it's my own issue, right? It's like not the world. But look, I'm also an Asian woman. I'm an immigrant, living in America. I wasn't an athlete growing up. I don't know if you heard my story, but I tried a lot of sports when I was growing up and I was bad at all of them. So it wasn't really until like I discovered climbing, like now I was like, okay, you know what? I'm actually like, this is my sport. Like I can be good at this. So a lot of it is my own head. I made up these stories, right? So like I made up the story that I didn't belong.
Yeah. I mean, certainly anybody that knows the business, it's a pretty white male dominated architecture. So I can imagine that there's something inherent in that. So speaking to that, and I had some ideas I sent you about what we might talk about, but I'm not promising we're going to follow those.
Sure, of course not. Have it go anywhere you want.
Yeah. This wasn't. Were you involved in the women's fireside chat when that
yes,
got? I could have sworn that's something that you spearheaded a couple of years ago, right?
Oh my God, I really want to talk about that. Actually, I'll talk about that. I do,
please.
And I hope people hear this because so my husband, Wes, he's been the chairperson of the CWA until recently. He just stepped down. He termed out. But we've always been really involved in CWA because I really believe that. So remember, I came from the toy industry, or like a very mature industry. And one of the things I learned from toys was it's a very, very, very competitive environment. It's not fun and games like people talk about it. It's very competitive and very professional. But we had this common goal because everybody knew that if a child swallows a bead, for example, and it shows up on the cover of the New York Times that some child died, then nobody is going to buy any bead kit, no matter what company makes it. Do you get what I'm saying? So the toy industry was always really good about like safety and understanding that you need to like raise the bar and make sure, I don't know if I'm describing this correctly, but like just make sure there's like standards. And that's why I believe in sharing with people, and I believe in like rising the industry up together. Anyways, but to the women's fireside chat. So a couple of years ago, I think it was like after COVID, I was on the content committee for CWA, and there was just like this movement of, you know, what you said. We wanted more diversity and inclusion. We wanted more minorities to be involved in the industry. So I spearheaded an effort to put together some women specific programming for the CWA. And I put together a panel where I wanted to interview women in climbing and talk about their career accomplishments. This is really funny, Scott. I must have called like 20 women across the country who worked at climbing gyms. And I was like, hey, you know what? Will you be willing to step up and speak at this panel? And a lot of them turned me down. And when I asked them, I said, why don't you think you can speak at this panel? And you know what they said? They said, because I don't feel like I have accomplished enough in the climbing industry. And honestly, when they told me that, I was like heartbroken. I wanted to cry. I'm a highly emotional person, by the way, because I felt like that. Like after all these years of doing all this stuff in climbing, I still feel like that a little bit. I go to CWA and I show up to these things and I just feel like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't say anything because I don't know. Like I haven't done enough. Do you get that? And I think this is something that like women we do to ourselves. And I really want to inspire people to be brave and like go out there, because I think it's important to kind of get over this. Yeah. Anyways, but yes, that's how the whole thing got started.
So at the summit you brought, you made a space for that.
Yeah. And it's kept going. I'm really proud of it. I think that's the 4th year running it. I just came back and they had it again. It was incredible. It was great.
I've got some staff members at CBJ have gone over the years and said that it's one of the highlights of their trip.
Thank you. I'm so glad.
That like almost imposter syndrome that you're talking about a little bit, maybe like I'm not experienced enough. I haven't done enough. It's funny that like pervades the whole industry, and I don't think it's limited to any demographic in particular. Yeah, I'm not sure why. It's funny. Maybe that's related to the professionalism of our industry, because there's so many people that it is the side hustle in our minds. And even if we go full time for a decade, it's still like the side hustle on some levels. And I guess there's maybe this like base humility that's built into the climbing culture. You know, some of us like to boast about our accomplishments, but on the whole, we kind of understate it. We don't. I think there's a lot of people on the rock too. Like, yeah, that's kind of hard. It's like, yeah, it's a 514 that you just flashed or whatever. You're like, so it becomes this thing that's like impossible to be that level of professionalism or be good enough to stand at the top and tell people what this industry is like.
I think in general, the sport, right? It's just, you're right. It's very humble, and it has humble beginnings, and that's what I love about climbing, by the way. I love this part of the culture, but it has its pros and cons, right? Yeah.
How can we combat that? Like, well, maybe we'll take a dive into like staff and your relationship with the people that work for you, because I think that's probably one of the most direct places that you can have impact on like the feelings of professionalism and the feelings of belonging. How many people do you have that work for you now? You're 6 locations. You're working on 7th.
Yeah.
What's your payroll now?
We're like 250.
Okay. So like 40 per location or something on average.
I mean, it's like, call it 50 or 60 for the larger locations, 10 or 20 for the smaller ones. And we have a good company. We have a sort of a executive team and senior leadership team. Yeah.
I'm sure when you started with just one, what was your role when you just had one gym? Like your personal role, how did you interact with your teams?
Well, we took turns being the gym manager. Dude, I was like a terrible boss in the beginning. I had to learn. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I had to learn how to be a good boss for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Because I've never done it before. And that was the thing. Everybody's just trying to figure it out all the time. Yeah.
You seem like you had the humility. How are you a bad boss? Tell me, because I think there's a lot of by the way, there's a lot of bad bosses in our industry because we don't, again, back to the professionalism, people gravitate towards this for the lifestyle component and they love climbing and other things. We might not be particularly good general managers at the beginning. So like, where did you mess up? Can you tell us where you could, yeah.
So remember, when I got into the climbing industry, right? Like I had come from investment banking. I was selling toys, like making a lot more money. I was like taking a pay cut, didn't pay myself. And then I came into the space where this is 15 years ago. We were paying people, I don't know, $8.50 an hour to work the front desk. And I just remember in the beginning, I had a lot of judgments for my people. I was like, you know what? They just don't work hard enough. You know, like, why can't I pay them enough to work hard enough? Why don't they show up on time? And I was complaining to my friends about this. And then I realized, like one of my friends, he told me, he was like, you know what? You really got to like look at yourself in the mirror and reflect on like what you are doing. So he sent me to like these personal development courses and sent me to this entrepreneur. So I joined this entrepreneur group really early on. And then I started learning and I realized, you know what? Like my friend was right. You know, I didn't give people a reason to believe in what they were doing. Like I didn't do a good job communicating, you know, I didn't provide good direction. I just expected them to be a certain way. And like nobody can read what's in my mind. Like I need to learn how to do better. And so that's been a journey. That's been a journey as well.
What were steps you took to get from here to there to here? Because I'll say, you seem very in touch with good management practices these days, and like I think it seems like a lot of that's probably knowing yourself at this point and having some of the confidence. But like we've watched you a little bit on like you're very public with your life on LinkedIn. You share a lot, and yeah, just I feel like that almost role models a lot of that good behavior, but. If you were terrible to begin with, like what was that evolution? Yeah, what was that evolution like?
I mean, there's a couple of things, right? I guess there was a lot of things, but I guess maybe there's the top couple of things were, you know, we hired a coach and he really helped us. Like the first thing we did, if we were to start all over again, what I would have done is come up with our core values and our purpose like earlier. So we went through this very intensive session to figure out like, okay, what do we stand for? What are our core values? And like, how do we communicate that? And how do we live that like every day? So that was really important. And then the other one was, look, we are running a business, right? We are climbing business professionals. So, and this is also like not a nonprofit. So like the business's purpose, we need to make a profit, but you don't need to scream at your front desk person every day about how to make a profit. Like you need to align the purpose of their job to the profit of the company. So I think we spent a lot of time trying to figure that out. Like instead of saying, oh, you know, the company needs to make X dollars. It's like, hey, you know what? We need to introduce climbing and we need to inspire X number of climbing experiences. Like every day when somebody comes in, like, you know, are you making a difference in someone's life? Like, are you teaching this kid or are you, you know, like helping them build confidence? Like it was sort of tying those things together. And then it was a lot of like personal development, like, you know, just learning how to be a good leader.
You got some coaching, looked to some other resources and inspiration, and I'm sure it was a gradual process. And
yeah, it was. It definitely didn't happen overnight. It was like a long journey for sure. Yeah.
It feels like you've emerged to a higher place now. Because
I think I'm a pretty good boss. You should ask the people that work for me, but I think I'm a pretty good boss because I am. Well, what I will say is, if you don't know this about me, is I'm highly emotional and I cry in meetings a lot. Sometimes I walk into board meetings and my board members, they'll make fun of me. Somebody will say something really touching and inspirational, and I'll just start crying. And they're like, "Oh my God, there she goes again!" So they're like, it's like this contest of trying to get Alice to cry in a meeting. But that's just who I am. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, doing my research for this call, it really felt like you're living that outwardly now. And so yeah, well, that's part of the story. Like you found climbing and it healed your life, and then you found entrepreneurship in a small business, and maybe it didn't heal you, but it healed your management skills or something. I don't know. Like you emerged.
It made me a better human. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, managers, listen to this. Just try to be a better human. That's all it's rooted in. All right, let's get back to the business just a little bit because there's some unique things that you've done for fundraising in it seems like the last just year or two. And I'm curious to learn a little bit more about it because I get calls all the time. In fact, like even just this morning, I heard like distressed climbing, and this is the hardest one, like distressed climbing gym that needs capital and how we're gonna raise it. I'm not sure your methods are going to address that. Once you're distressed, you're kind of in a really tough spot. But I also hear a lot about like people that are reaching out for the first gyms and they want investment. And of course, I point out it's often friends and family. They're like, how do I talk to a private equity? I'm like, well, you don't until you have two gyms. Like that's not a thing. But you've been doing I guess for the two things that I'll cite, and then you tell us more about it, is it seems like last year you partnered with an impact fund because you rent all your facilities. You don't own the land, but you partnered with an impact fund to buy your LAX property like a year ago. And then most recently, it sounded like this new gym, what's it, Elisa Viejo? Is that? Lisa Viejo, that it's like member owned on some levels. And so there, like in the last year, you've kind of found two different funding models. Like, and some listeners might not know what's an impact fund. So could you like tell us about the impact fund? What is an impact fund and why did that, what was that good for you?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with that. So I'll actually go back to the story. It's interesting. So yes, we lease all of our buildings, including the flagship one, which is at LAX, which we own now. So what happened was we had this amazing landlord. His father died suddenly and he had to sell the building and we had a right of first refusal in the lease. So he came to me first and he said, hey, you know what? I would really like to sell the building to you. And it's actually public, so I'll tell you, he wanted like $7.1 million. And I was like, well, I don't have $7.1 million. How am I going to figure this out? And at first, so I went the route that I knew how, which is I went to the SBA and tried to get a loan, but that fell through. You know what? Actually, it was like literally in the middle of it was there was a new law change that SBA companies can no longer has to be 100% owned by citizens of the US. And as I told you, my ex-boyfriend is one of my largest investors and he lives in Hong Kong. So I got disqualified. So I was literally in the due diligence process for the loan and it fell apart. So then kind of had to figure it out. So I just did what I did best. You know, I'm really good at like asking for help and asking and asking and asking. So I probably called 100 people, called like every single person I knew in real estate. I asked all my friends, I was like, you know, what do I do? And one of my friends, in one of my CEO groups, she owns like a recyclable dishes and plastic bags, sustainable. I'm losing you know what I mean? I'm losing my vocabulary. Anyways, but she told me, she's like, you know what? I think your business is an impact business. And I was like, what does that mean? She goes, it means that you're not driven like first by profit. Like you are purpose driven, and you're doing good for the world and you're making a difference for the world in all these other ways. And she pointed some examples out of how I was doing that, right? And she was like, also, look, is your leadership team highly diverse? Like how many % female and male, right? And how many people are like non-white in your company? So she like asked me some questions and I was like, actually, you're right. I never even thought about that, right? So then she introduced me to a bunch of her investors. And then I called this one impact fund, Kachua, who we ended up partnering with. And I just explained my whole situation. And they were like, wow, we would love to be your partner for the real estate. And that's kind of how it got started. So then, we're on their website. You can read everything I'm telling you is like on their website. It's public. They came in as our lead investor. We got a loan. And then some of the Sunder One investors put in additional money. So they helped us buy our building. And then I really am so impressed that like during the due diligence process, they checked all of those things. They had us verify like, hey, out of our members, how many % of them are women? Out of our employees, out of your leadership team, like what does it look like? Also, the building that we bought in LA has solar panels, and like that was really important. It was an incredible experience.
Do you think that's a funding option other climbing gyms should look into?
Absolutely. I think I've talked to a couple of gym owners. People have reached out to me since they saw the article on CBJ. So thank you for writing about it. talked to a couple of people and I said, you know what? And I've actually introduced them to Conchua too. I said, they'd be happy to talk to you if you're the right fit. If you're the right fit.
Yeah, because that's a big push in 2016, trying to improve the world through investment in impact funding rather than just like the straight bottom line. Of course, they want to make their money back too, but they tend to be the long play. They have a long view. They don't need their money back by 3 quarters from now or whatever.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing. I think there's a lot of conversation around like private equity alternatives. Like this is like a legitimate one. They're here for the long term. We have a new 15-year lease with this partner.
It's funny, lease negotiations is like the number one reason climbing gyms close is they can't make it through that, whether that's an acquisition or just a reneg. But it sounds like you had the dominoes fell in line. It also sounds like you worked your butt off. Excuse me, like 100 calls. I'm getting this as a theme with you, Alice. I think you work hard.
Yeah,
I think you work hard.
I'll tell you something. I've been talking a little bit about this at different events that I've gone to. People ask me, they're like, what do you? I'll share the story. So I have a lot of mentors in my life, like a ton of them. I am a joiner. I'll say I'm in all these CEO groups, like I'm in YPO and EO and like women groups. I say yes to like way too many things. I have to reel that in. But one of my mentors told me a couple of years ago, he's like, what's really special about you, Alice? Do you know what you're good at? I said, no, I don't. Because I have this thing about me. Like I have a lot of insecurities and I have a lot of self-doubt, Scott. I don't know. I'm just going to be honest. Like I think I have a lot of voices in my head that tell me that I'm not good enough, like a lot. And this comes from my upbringing, comes from being an Asian woman, all this crap, right? But one of my mentors told me, he goes, the thing that you're really good at is I've mentored a lot of entrepreneurs and I've never met anyone like you that is so open to asking for help. It's like you literally just, when you don't know something, you ask and you ask and you ask, like you have no shame. And I realized that I never knew that was a strength until I got a little older, and I realize it now. And the reason I ask for help is because I never think I have the right answer, and I never think I am the smartest person in the room. So I always think somebody else must have a better answer. Somebody else must have the solution to this problem that I don't have. So let me go and ask people. But what happens as I've gotten older and with more experience and everything, I started to realize that when I ask and ask and ask and ask a lot, it's like, wait a second, like I actually have the answers.
I bet a lot of those calls kind of valid at this point anyway, maybe not when you were a crappy manager in the beginning, but, at this point anyways, I bet a lot of those calls validate what you already knew.
Yeah. And you know what, though, even if they validate, that's good because I've done the homework and I've gone and asked a lot of different opinions.
It shows humility, and it's also like back to the hard work. I get the feeling that you're not afraid of lifting the heavy burden, that you lean into that. It seems like you see the obstacle and you'll chip away at it with 100 phone calls.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, people talk about this. Again, like I said, I've done a lot of different like entrepreneur talks lately, and people ask me, they're like, oh, when I have an idea, how do you raise money? I'm afraid to tell people my idea. And look, ideas are free. Have you heard this before? Like ideas are free. Everybody has some idea that's going to be $1 billion company, but it's like, are you going to do the work? Because the work is where it's at. I'll give you a bunch of ideas. Like, are you going to do it or not?
It's not a week of work or a month of work. It's years. It's years of work.
Yeah,
that's where I always fall. I get to the wall. And as long as we're talking about personal, just like how do you do it? Like, do you sleep less than the average human, or like?
Oh no, I sleep about 8 hours a day, 100 all the time.
Yeah,
I sleep a lot.
Okay.
But how do I do it? I mean, people always want to know how you do it right. That's what you ask when you're like, it kind of goes back to what I was saying is like, I don't think I have all the answers, and I don't think I do anything better than anybody else does. So I think I'm pretty good at delegating, and I'm a good manager. I'm a good leader because I will delegate something that I know this person's really good at, and then they'll do a good job. And I don't worry about it because I'm not as good as they are. I'm not as good as they are at doing it. So like, why should I micromanage it? That's how
it does not sound like you're a control freak, and I think that's important on any of these, especially small business.
I'm a control freak on certain things. Yeah. All
right. Well, you know where to hold the line, and you know where to release, since that's a sign of an executive.
I know what I'm not good at. How's that? I know what I'm not good at.
The more you know, the more you know that you don't know, or whatever the saying is. I think actually, see, I don't want to go down that tangent too far, but yeah, I see back to the imposter syndrome, past to the, like, our whole industry. I think there's a lot of people that really, really do know this stuff, but also they know it so well that they know what they don't know. And that's a lot of it as well. And so we're afraid to speak up because where we feel really experienced is like in this niche, but the niche doesn't cover everything. And so I don't want to talk at all because it's going to go beyond what I really know. And then at that point, I haven't really done it well. I'm not a PhD at that specific topic. So I don't know that topic at all is where we default to often. Anyway, okay, so you said you're a joiner and you raise your hand and get in all these groups. So I'm going to take that might have been why. Tell me how you got into. We're going to go into USA Climbing just a little bit because you were on the board. Was that part of your joining kind of mentality, and like you want to help the community, and like you were probably hosting comps, and you're like, how do you help this community as you get involved, and you sit on the board, and they needed gym owners, and so, but you sat on the board, and it was only for a couple of years, and then something happened. A couple things happened maybe, and you resigned. We covered this at CBJ too. You resigned, and you kind of had a little bit of a scathing letter on the way out. And so much so that they were like, yeah, we respect Alice, but we respectfully disagree with some of your characterizations. So there was like an eruption moment. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, but not so much to dig up dirt, but I'd like to talk about where we're headed now, because USA Climbing is still in the news, and there's, lots of different angles you can look at it, but some people that are unhappy. And I'll say the last thing too, that in the setup is there's been some pushback to this National Training Center, and your business partner, I think, and then you were also signers of these letters that kind of push back on the idea. And so, yeah, how did you get started? How did you get sucked into being on the board? And then what caused the break? And where do you think we are now?
Well, look, I'll start at the end. I'll start at like where we are now. I saw Mark last week, or when we were at CW. I had lunch with him. It was very nice. And I have apologized to him. I told him, I'm really sorry that my actions caused you pain. Look, at the end of the day, Scott, look, we're all just humans, right? Like walking the earth. And like, this is just our job right now. But it's really for me, it's all about like relationships. And I really tried the best that do the best that I can to not hurt people, like intentionally. Because I think I don't know. I think it's about like the human experience. But so I think Mark and I are okay. I told him that like I was sorry and I wish I could have, done things differently. But fundamentally, like I still disagree with, actually, let me back up. I think it's really important to have a training center. And I think it's amazing that we got the government to give us, the state of Utah to give us the money to build the National Training Center. But I still am in the camp that I think it should be a training center for athletes. And it should not get into the business of like commercial climbing gyms, right? That's sort of the core issue that people like the gym owners and USA Climbing is fighting about. Would you agree?
Yeah, there's a group of gym owners that also push back just the concept of stretching the mission, and that they're not going to be able to do the core of serving athletes as well if they've got to run a gym too.
I think way too. So I'm in that camp. And I think that for me, it's like, look, I did the best that I could being in the organization, trying to communicate like how I felt about that. And I think the board disagreed with me and Mark disagreed with me. And then so I felt like, it just wasn't my place anymore. Like I was tired. I didn't have the energy to keep fighting. And I felt like my time was better spent elsewhere trying to find like other battles. It doesn't mean I don't love climbing. It doesn't mean I don't support competition climbing. It doesn't mean that I don't support the Olympics. Like I support all those things. But like on this particular thing, like I was a gym owner that stood in this viewpoint, right? And like really, when it comes down to all that, taking out all the emotions, like that's where it is. And I think we should be able to disagree, especially in this country. Like I came to this country because I immigrated. Like I became a citizen in my 20s, and I chose to be here because I think that we should be able to live in a world where we disagree with each other. Yeah. And that's really it. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and if you don't, at some point, there's enough like tension in the room that it's time to get out of the room. It kind of felt like that. Like you even in your letter, you said something like, I will be viewed as a troublemaker if I stay. That takes a lot of kind of bad vibes and bad interactions to get that to that point where someone like you would admit that you almost feels like you're the troublemaker now in this group. So
I think so much. I really believe that like time heals everything. I just told you my ex-boyfriend story, right? Like I'm not somebody that holds grudges. That's just not me. I'm very forgiving, and that's one of my values. And I hope other people are the same way. I don't know if they're still mad at me, but I genuinely believe that everybody on the USA Climbing board, they are doing the best that they can. They're not like malicious or trying to hurt anybody. Like everyone's doing the best that they can. And it just happens in the situation. We don't see it eye to eye, and it's fine.
do you think it's because they don't know what it's like to run the businesses that actually support this thing?
I mean, maybe that was one of it, or maybe they just thought they could do it better than the rest of the gym owners, which is fine too. You know, everybody has like a viewpoint. Like Mark has his, and it's funny because when I saw him at CWA when we had lunch, he even said, he goes, "I want to prove you wrong." And I was like, "Please do. Like, I want you to prove me wrong. You know, go ahead and do it." You know, but I'm still going to tell you what I think about it, but I'm going to tell you what I think. You're going to do what you're going to do, and that's also okay. Yeah. So look, we are supporting USA Climbing comps. We host comps for the kids. We host especially speed because we have the only speed wall here in LA, and like we support the athletes. So, and this is just going to be a fight in our industry. And you know what though? This is not going to be the only one, right? Like I think that because the climbing industry is so small, so it feels like a big deal right now. But in the grand scheme of things, in a couple of years, like it's not going to be as big of a deal, I think.
It'll be all the fights of the moment that we forget later. So you know, you've been on the board, you've hosted comps, you've been really involved with it. Actually you were involved in that like Pacific climbing series that happened for a year. So like you've really done a lot for competition climbing as far as like being a gym owner. Where's your vision? Do you have a place that you see like, hey, if USA Climbing really thrived and like could do it according to how you feel, where would we go? What would be the new things that what would it look like in 5 or 10 years if it kind of followed your?
Yeah, I'll talk about the Pacific Climbing Series a little bit because, you know, we did that. Actually, that's really more my husband, Wes. So you should talk to him. He's been working on that with Ian and with Jeffrey, with Mesa Rim and Touchstone. Well, we're really happy that we did that, and it continues sort of at a smaller scale. But one of the reasons we did that, the other thing is like a lot of this is personal, you realize, right? Like we're like it's business versus business, but it's really personal because I have a 13-year-old child who is not a competition climber. And she just she's not one of those kids that like want to be in this competition environment, but she wants to go to some competitions like for fun. And then what we realize is there's a bunch of kids like that there is something missing that USA Climbing is not offering. Do you get what I'm saying? Like the USAC QEs have become so competitive, which I get it because the sport's in the Olympics now and it's gotten bigger. But like kids show up to these competitions and they're crying because they want to win. It's like such a big deal. And I just think that, hey, there's got to be some like recreational league that they can be a part of so they can still enjoy trying hard, but not so competitive. So that was like sort of the intention of that. And I think that honestly, that is one of the fastest growing areas of the sport. And I think USA Climbing is like missing out on trying to capture that part of the youth.
The folks that they don't care to travel all over the region and go to divisionals. They just want to get together and have a good time with other climbers like them in a little more low pressure, less pressure environment. Yeah, it's funny. I'm in Colorado. We have this, and they're branching out into other states. We have the American Scholastic Climbing League. I believe I got that right. The ASCL. And it's kind of like that. It's a very down to earth, very low stress environment. And it's also low stress for the gyms. Cause like that's part of it kind of, all the things, all the factors play in. Kids want to compete, but also the way the formats are, it's very impactful for the gyms. So you got to do all this route setting and close walls, and it's a big economic impact on the gym, and it impacts. There's a whole lot of members that don't care at all about it, and they get pushed out during that time, and there's a lot of tension about these events. And so I love I guess this is a plug for the ASCL. We love you, Teresa. They make it a very easy thing for the gyms to host, and I feel like seems like maybe the PCS is doing that too. And
yeah, just like very low key, pretty easy to put on. Doesn't have to, not a lot of lifting and route setting, and like really fun. And I go to the competitions and I talk to the parents and the kids, and they have a great time. And actually, it's exactly those parents and those kids that I was talking to you about. Kind of like my kid.
There's probably a lot more of them from a business perspective. It's a good slice of the pie to target with some services,
because
right?
Also, those are actually like your most loyal members, right? Like they've been here a long time. Their kid got into climbing from a birthday party, and they want this to be a part of their life. I mean, so now I'm going to tangent, but like one of the things, like one of my biggest hopes is, I think that when I tell my kids, like I want them to stay in climbing for a long time. Like I want them to identify as a climber, and it doesn't have to mean, hey, I'm going to go to the Olympics. It's like, this is something that I have in my life. And one day, when I come home, like when I go to college and come back, like it can still be part of me. I don't want them to hate climbing.
Yeah, and you get to that high end competition, and if
and
your foot pops off before the first clip, you just your life is ruined for
you see those kids, right? I'm sure you see them. You see a lot of them now.
Yeah. I mean, I won't go into it too much, but one of the things you and I have in common is I was on the CUD, I was on the board of the USA Climbing early in what they were, and I was a troublemaker too, but because I believed in the grassroots. I ran a whole program that was based on the grassroots, and I brought the program into, they merged, the American Bouldering Series was my thing. We merged it with USA Climbing. Walters guided that whole thing. And, but I was always, and then, so I had a token seat on the board for a couple of years. And I was like, always, they were pushing for the Olympics, which I love. And let's talk about the Olympics briefly, but they were talking about the Olympics in 2004 and making all these big decisions. And I was like, wait, there's this recreational thing that you're just talking about. And like, we have to serve. And if we build the foundation, there'll be even a bigger movement behind the high end, the elite. And I think that's what climbing is really about, is community, not just like beating someone else on the wall. Like that's almost not what our true community is about. Like if you go into the gyms, we root each other on. Like the community is what we're about, not like dominating someone else, which competition. So I always thought that there was a miss there. And I was like, we all want to see more recreational. And I was a troublemaker. So I never sent a letter like yours, but I exited too. Anyway, Olympics. Okay. We got to talk about the Olympics because what's this? How far, I'm sure you know this. How far is the site from your closest gym?
I'll start with this. It's super funny because I get this question a lot now recently. They're like, did you open a climbing gym in LA thinking that the Olympics were going to come to LA and climbing is going to be in the Olympics? I was like, are you kidding? Come on. Really? When we started this, and I have to go back and be like, I started this climbing gym because I wanted to be a side gig, and I live in LA, and my family lives here. So I decided to open this gym in LA. And then, but funny enough, that the Olympics is going to be at the Long Beach Climbing Center. And I have a gym I think I've mapped it 8 minutes away. I have the closest gym to the Long Beach Climbing Center. By the way, by accident, because when I signed the lease and built that gym, I had no idea that climbing was going to be in Long Beach. Right. So then also I have a gym in Westwood Village where the athletes are going to be staying at UCLA. Also no idea that was going to happen. So a lot of it was luck, honestly. But I also believe my general philosophy about life and entrepreneurship is that there is luck and then there's hard work. And you have to, but there's luck, there's good luck, and there's bad luck. COVID is bad luck. Who would have started a climbing gym thinking COVID was coming, right? If you think COVID is coming, nobody would have gotten into this business. But then when there's good luck, we have to find a way to leverage that good luck and do something with it. So I do feel like good luck is kind of in my corner right now because the Olympics are coming to LA. So I am like 100% going to figure out how to get the most out of the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean that was the next question is like, what are you going to do? Like, I don't want to put pressure, but the clock is ticking. It's like 2 years away. What do you? How do you think you're gonna, leverage that for your gym?
So actually, I actually been thinking about that more holistically, like for our industry and for the region. And do you remember during COVID, did you hear about this? Like we started a coalition in California and in Washington where we got all the different gym owners together to lobby the state, right? I think that was we united during this really tough time. And I actually think that for the Olympics, we can unite again, but this time over a really like happy time. So I've talking regularly with Ann Worley, with Jeffrey, with Ian, like with the different gyms, like all the different gyms in this area to see how we can work together. The World Climbing is coming out to do a tour of all the sites to figure out like how the athletes can practice, how do we accommodate, international federations, like during the Olympics. And there's also even been talks about like, at the actual venue, you can have a bouldering wall where it can do some advertising about climbing, not a specific gym, just about like elevating the sport. So I think a lot of the things that we're doing are around that. So it's not things that I'm doing for Sender One, but it's things I'm doing for the industry that's going to benefit everybody in climbing.
You see a boulder, you mean like a consumer level, like a park boulder kind of thing outside of the main venue that people can, that anybody can interact with. Big sign, find a climbing gym near you.
Yeah. Like,
it, right?
Watch the games, come try this thing, and then find a climbing gym near you. I think that, yeah. So there's a bunch of like those ideas that we're working on together with all the gym owners in this area that I think will benefit everybody. Yeah. So hopefully, look, I don't know if this has come up, but Tokyo was tough, right? Because it was COVID, there's not a lot of viewers. And then in Paris, it was a tough time. So I don't know if a lot of gym owners saw like an Olympic lift. So then I do hear that people are coming into LA thinking a little bit pessimistic, like, oh, is this going to do anything for my business? But I'm in the camp of, look, if you have to believe that it's going to do something for your business, you have to think about this optimistically and like manifest a reality. So I'm just like doing everything I can to live into that reality.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have all the national federations that are going to show up. To your point, what is there's like the 102 national federations that feed into World Climbing now, and each one of them wants like a little training site. We probably don't, despite all the gyms in the LA region, we probably don't have enough gyms for everybody to have their own gym. So there's and they're going to want to work with the newer, better facilities. And so are you already in those discussions about like trying to schedule things? And
we've already been talking to each other. And you know what? And actually, I have COVID to thank for that, because it was because of COVID that I got to know all my competitors in the area. And people talk about this all the time. They're like, oh, do you talk to your competitors? And I was like, yeah, like regularly. But before COVID, nobody did. Do you remember this? I think that the industry was more closed off, but COVID allowed us to call each other up and like get to know each other, which is great.
It kind of ties up altogether. One of the things I was going to ask is what's your relationship with all the gyms? Because LA has probably
we are like
higher density of gyms than almost anywhere in the whole United States.
Yeah,
and there's big operators. Like you got 6 gyms. Touchstone is there. Hangar 18's got almost a dozen gyms. There's a whole bunch of like twosies chains with two, and there's history.
There's business, you see.
Yeah. So like, okay. And maybe it ties into COVID and maybe it ties into the Olympics, but talk to me about that like competitive environment. Like it's good that you're talking together. What comes out of that and how do you think it benefits everybody? I
mean, first of all, I think that after all these years, I've learned that people are still going to go to the gym that is closest to their house. You know that? I don't know how much time you spent in LA, but sometimes driving like 5 miles can take, 45 minutes, especially in the middle of LA. So even if you perceive there's a lot of competition, but they're actually, the gyms are spaced out in a pretty good, like, geographically, because the traffic is so bad, like all the time. So that's how the gyms survive, I think. I think the other thing that happens is because there's so much competition, there's so many of us in this market, we have what do you call it? Like we've created like segments that we own. So for example, like I am like very family friendly. People call me like the Gumby gym and I own it. I was like, okay, we host a lot of birthday parties. We're really good for beginners. And we do have, the elite, the speed wall and like the ice cream cone and the torch, like the big walls. But I think we get that reputation because we are so friendly to beginners. But then like I think where Touchstone does a really great job is if you go to their Hollywood gyms, like, man, I think about this too. Like, if I were like 22 years old and single, I would totally be going to gym at Touchstone. Right. So like, depends on where you live and depends on sort of where you are in your life. So I think that's what's starting to happen with the gyms here in LA is they're segmenting themselves. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big issue on for the industry on the whole, really, is how do you deal with competition and how do we address this perceived saturation in some markets? And it's through differentiation. It's we're going to be more family friendly, or we're going to be adults only, or we're going to be training focused, and of course location is like, I guess the primary motivator in many ways, but still some people will travel a little bit to get to their to the gym that feels like theirs. Like,
yeah, some people will travel a little bit, but here's the thing. Now that I have 6 of them, right, and I can only look at my own data. I don't know anybody else's. When we opened like our last new gym in South Orange County, it's only, I don't know, 10, 12 miles from Santa Ana. We lost like very few people. I thought more people were going to move to the new gym, and they didn't. Not as many moved as we thought they would because of this distance, honestly.
Yeah.
Because you can like map them on the map and you're like, oh, they live here. They're just not willing to drive that extra 20 minutes. They just weren't going to.
And so much more market specific too, dense and hard to travel through markets like LA. I'm in the Denver area, and downtown Denver will get us snarled a little bit, but for the most part, we can move around from, Fort Collins to Sea Springs pretty quickly and in between. And yeah, it's so yeah, that's the era. Well, so here's the question: do you guys have any like new? You got 2 bouldering gyms? Is that right? 3 bouldering.
So right now we have 2 bouldering gyms.
2 bouldering.
4 full service. Our next one is full service. We're in permitting. Probably gonna start construction second half of the year, and then we have a couple of other ones that we're like just kind of working on. Yeah.
And I didn't do my research. You have like a youth training component to one, like sub facility on one of them, or do I have that wrong?
Yeah, we have a training center in Orange County. We have a dedicated like youth training center too.
Yeah,
so that's 7, I guess technically. Yeah.
So you
count that one as one because it's like next to one of the campuses.
All right. So you've played around with differentiation, and
yeah, we've tried some things and failed at a lot of things. Let me tell you. Like, what the thing is. This is the thing is like people are biased. This is like a bias. You interview successful gym owners, right? Or successful business owners. But how about the ones that like don't make it? Do you realize there's so many lessons that we can be learning from people who don't survive?
You haven't closed a gym yet, right?
No.
So I can't talk to you as the in that.
I think there's a lot to learn. I think there's a lot to learn from business owners who have closed gyms, who have shut down their businesses, and I just like mad respect about what they go through. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the big chains. That's one of the things I know. Yeah, like Touchstone, one of your neighbors, and Movement. Like not every one of their gyms has stayed open, yeah, that's the industry on the whole. We were like, well, we'll know when we're saturated because the gyms will start closing. But I think actually there's most of the closures that I've seen are like lease issues or small businesses that the management, personal things come up. When you're a single owner operator, personal issues can really make a big dent in your continuation. So anyway, I don't think we're actually seeing a lot of closures when, we put the data together every year, and this next year I think is probably going to be at the highest level of, and a lot of the newer gyms that opened, especially that COVID era, just people got roped into leases in 2019 and didn't open until 2020, 2021. And stuck with it for a while, but coming up on this 5 year, and it's hard to renew your lease after
I've
5
heard
years.
that too. I've heard that coming out of CW, I heard that there was going to be more gyms closing than opening this year. And I believe it. I believe it because I guess even I feel it, and I think I'm like a mid-sized operator, and I've been doing it for a while, but it's gotten harder. That's what I would say. Is when I think back on the first gym we opened, the first two, it was like you had heard this. People were like, "Oh, if you open, they will come." Have you heard this before?
And that era was true in the teens. Yeah, it was a Wild West, 2010 to 2019.
It's not true anymore. It's hard work. Like the last 2 years, we've probably have worked 3 times harder and didn't see the same results. But then again, I think this is where I go back to like what I know, right? Because I came from the toy industry and like different industries, and man, toys was so hard. Like everything, you had to work for everything. So for me, I just was kind of used to it. I was like, oh, well, this is just working hard. Okay, well, I know how to do that.
Yeah, and it seems like the headwinds are not the market as much. It feels like the headwinds are more the costs of doing business. It's your real estate, it's your labor, it's cost of building the thing. Is just all those have gone up. But it feels like when you look at some of the metrics that we've had in our annual report, is like foot traffic is still pretty solid. The revenue is still coming in. There's the market, and we keep adding gyms, and there's a little moment where you kind of eat each other's lunch for a little while when the new gym opens, and then within a year or two you're both flourishing and growing. But it's certainly not the teens anymore. This has been a really treat to talk with you. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to make sure you throw out and our listeners get to hear from you?
I don't think so. I think you've asked me more than the things that I thought you were going to ask me.
You're really a good speaker.
Thank you.
Because you nailed them all. Any shout outs? You want to give a shout out to someone or something?
Well, to my team and my PR agent for finding this, opportunity. And just to you actually for reaching out. I've been wanting to talk to you. Actually, I want to get to know you better. So maybe it's next time when you come to LA, we can hang out and have coffee and we can get to know each other.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Yeah. You're an inspiring business owner. You're an inspiring climber. I'm sorry that you have so much imposter syndrome. You shouldn't. You're working your way out of it. I'm working on it. Yeah. It's like one of those. But you're deeply experienced. You're deeply knowledgeable. We're fortunate to have you in our industry. So thanks for spending this hour with me. And let's have coffee.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. And I love it. Like I said, climbing changed my life, and I am. Actually, I guess I'll say this is a lot of people ask me lately, they're like, oh, how much longer are you going to doing it for? Are you going to sell your business? What's next? Right. And my answer is really, it's pretty consistent. It's like, you know what, after doing this for 13 years, I am actually having the most fun I've ever had. Right now is the most fun. I wake up every day. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go to work. I can get to work on this thing and that thing. And I can't quit now because it's like you're building my husband says it's like I'm building a race car, and now that I've built it, I'm going to drive it for a while because it's really cool. So I feel like it's a good time. I feel very optimistic about the world and about the industry, and so you'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll watch for great things. And you can't stop racing your car because you've got the Grand Prix coming in 2 years. So before
the Olympics.
I hope a lot more gyms in the LA area have that kind of excitement, and I hope that y'all are able to collaborate in some really meaningful ways. So
yeah.
All right.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Scott. This was so fun. I can't wait to spend more time with you and get to know you.
Oh, thank you. That touches my heart. I appreciate you, and I'll see you soon.
Hey.
Man, that was a fun conversation with Alice, hearing her perspectives and history and how she looks at entrepreneurship. Hope you got something out of it. Hey, if you liked what you heard, make sure you tune in. We put these out every 2 weeks. There's a route setting podcast with our co-associate Holly Chen. And then I'm talking to business owners and leaders every 2 weeks. So you can follow us at climbingbusinessjournal.com. And you find that on most of the socials, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. And we're publishing to YouTube now. It's a climbing biz at YouTube. So make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.